Okay. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to give a few minutes for more people to join, but it looks like we got a couple of people. It looks like we have 23 people here. Yes, amazing. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I want to start off by thanking you all for joining us tonight, especially given everything that's happening in the world. Now more than ever, it's important that we get together to share and learn from each other's experiences. So thank you again for being engaged in the Latinas in Tech community, and thanks for being here. For those of you that are new, Latinas in Tech is a nonprofit organization with the aim to connect, support, and empower Latina women working in tech. We work hand in hand with top technology companies to create safe spaces for learning, mentorship, and recruitment. We're an ever-growing organization with now 12 chapters represented by over 10,000 women of 23 different nationalities working at over 100 companies. In Chicago alone, we recently grew from 370 Facebook group members in January to now almost 420. We just want to keep growing. Many of you already know our Chicago chapter co-founders, but as a refresh, there's Cecilia Fisher Benitez. She's a network specialist at Code for America. Yvonne Gonzalez, she's the account executive at ICF Next. And now for your new board members, that includes myself, Carla Jacobson. I am the director of customer success at Jernera. We have Andrea Minjas. She's a software engineer at Beyond Finance, and Daisy Espinosa, IT auditor at TDS. We're so happy to have you here and to develop our Latinas in Tech community here in Chicago. And now for the stars of tonight's conversation. We have three amazing panelists tonight who are here to talk to you about what it's really like to be a super mom, especially during this crazy pandemic. So I'd like each panelist to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your kids and your career. Let's start with Rocio and go down the line.
Hi, thank you, Carla, for the introduction, and thank you, Chicago, for coordinating this webinar. This is our new reality, right? Everything is online, and I hope that more moms can get benefit from this. So my name is Rocio Vanera. I happen to work at Latinas in Tech. I am also a mom. I have Ana Sofia, who's a 11-year-old girl, and then I have Liam, who is an 8-year-old. She's in 5th grade, well, going into 5th grade, and he's going into 3rd. So yeah, I pass it on to Daisy.
To Deliana.
Sorry, to Deliana. Another name next to me.
No worries. Hi, everyone. My name is Deliana Escobari. I am a software engineer at Microsoft. If you guys have ever heard of Visual Studio, that's what I do. I have a 4-month-old, so all she knows is pandemic. And very excited to be here. I was thinking like, oh, I don't have many tools of success to share with people, but hopefully I'm here to share my experience and let other moms out there that you're not alone, that we're going through this apart but together. So yeah.
I'm sure there's moms of very different stages. So thank you, Deliana, for joining us. And then last but not least, Noemi.
You're still muted.
Hey everyone, my name is Noemi Romero. I am a customer quality engineer at 4 Degrees. I have a wonderful daughter who's 17 years old and a son who's 7 years old. I'm excited to be here and share any experience that I might have about parenting during this pandemic.
Okay, thank you guys so much for those introductions. Just so everyone's on the same page, as the host, I'll be asking our panelists a question, and then I will also share that question, as you can see on the screen, to make it easier for everyone to follow along. Audience, please feel free to ask your questions in a Q&A box as we go along, so you should be able to see it there on Zoom. We're gonna go through as many of your questions as possible later on in the discussion. So now, first question. What new skills have you learned during the pandemic as a mom that you've applied to your work and career? Noemi, do you want to start?
Sure. So during this pandemic, I feel like I've learned to set boundaries better. Whenever I have a conference call, my kids respect that and they know that they shouldn't come in. And outside of work, I have those same boundaries. So whenever it's family time, whenever it's time to spend with my kids, nothing should come, in between. And I just put everything aside and respect both of those times separately. I've learned to work as a team more, with my kids. They help around the house and we communicate a little bit better now that we were, everyone learning at the same time, going to school at the same time from home, and to set more time aside for myself. I think that has been very important during this whole pandemic.
And that makes a lot of sense. Deliana, Rocio, do you guys want to add?
I can add because it's really interesting how Noemi's coming from both sides. She's setting boundaries with her family and work. And when you have a little baby, I try to set boundaries, but she just doesn't listen. She just doesn't. So yeah, it's a little bit different. So I guess like the boundaries come more like at work, but this is a great skill that I think everybody should learn, is to reprioritize constantly, because some things that may sound really urgent at some point over time may not be, and other things may be even more important. So like realizing what those big goals are has actually made me more efficient at work and more impactful. So there's a lot of stuff, a ton of stuff that's going to the back burner, but somehow people are just as happy or more or happier with me because I'm getting the big things done, and I constantly drop the ones that are not as meaningful. Like there's always tons of stuff to do at work, but you can't operate that way. So I guess that's my biggest skill. Oh, and doing everything one-handed. Holding a baby.
Multitasking, huh? So I would start with that one, multitasking. If we already were multitaskers, this is like we didn't know what we were talking about. But in 2019, I would say. Sometimes one thing I learned personally is I've always been like obsessed with getting everything done with high quality. Like I had very high standards for myself, and I bit myself when I don't reach that. And now, like, my house is a mess. My kids haven't taken their pajamas in like days. And like, I'm just beating myself up like, why am I allowing this to happen? Or I was a little late to this meeting because I had their Zooms going on. And we need to be a lot more gentle with ourselves. I'm learning that. I'm not there yet. But everything is a win-win, but also a give-give. And I feel like my work needs, and everybody's work needs to understand we're going through something, right? And our family as well. So I might not be able to answer if I give them extra time in the iPad when I'm at this webinar, but also I might, take a little bit more time off to cook lunch. So I'm learning to coexist, I would say, without being too harsh on myself, my kids, and my husband.
Thank you, Rocio. I love that notion of just being gracious with yourself. I think that's so important during this time. So next question. It seems that this unprecedented time has called on moms to take on even more roles than ever before. You go from parent to teacher to chef to activity director and sometimes even referee. So I just want to get a sense of what resources you've relied on during this time to help you manage all of these roles. Has it been partner, family, neighbors, Netflix? What has really helped? Deliana.
Okay, yeah, let's okay.
Let's go Deliana first.
I was kind of thinking because it's a like, I think as kids get older, it's easier to use other resources. Like it can be a little limiting when you have a newborn. So me and my husband have been working as a stronger team, I think, and it's I think it can make your relationship a little tougher because you're like leaning on each other pretty hard. But we are practicing to always think of the other person as trying their best. So you don't sound as critical when things inevitably go sideways. But he's been my biggest resource, and I can't imagine single moms. How are they getting through this time? But if they're out there, please share your stories. Other than that, I really have to keep an open mind to find support in places where I didn't think there would be. So I joined a couple communities online of new moms and new parents in my area. And even though we don't get to see each other, our shared experience helps a ton, just to hear what other people are trying, what kind of techniques they're using, what books they're reading, and just the thought of not being alone helps a lot. So it's just a good time to be creative with that.
No, that's great. Rocio, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So I love technology. My husband is also in technology, so we kind of sometimes overdo it. We at some point we tried to use Asana to manage our own family. We ended up creating a Google Sheet calendar right when this started, because the schools didn't figure it out right away what was going to happen, how to give us or train us to be teachers. So we came up with a Google Sheet calendar by every 30 minutes by kid with a check mark. And that was a lot of trust on the kid learning by themselves Zoom and Google Sheets and Google Calendar. So it took some learning. They learned. It actually worked. Then later the school catched up, and they introduced Google Classroom, which was a great help, sort of, because not only Google Classroom is a great asset if the teacher knows how to use it. But one of my teachers, she totally nailed it, and the other one was all over the place. So that did matter a lot, and like you cannot influence the school that much on how they organize. So at some point for my son, I wish we continued with my own spreadsheet, but with my daughter, Google Classroom was really great. And then we started discovering alternative technologies that have been emerging. Like there is Epic, where the kids just love reading, having read out louds, and they've been learning so much at their own pace. That one is just probably, to me, the one that I love the most. But there's so many others like OutSchool, so many courses online, Girl Scout camps. So we're still learning as we go, and as society learns, there are more new tools that we can use.
Thank you. No, I think you just brought up some ones that I had never heard before, and I know a lot of moms, and I think that idea of the Epic one sounded really interesting. Noemi, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, so I think I second both of them. My partner has been, my biggest resource during this whole time. He practically took the job of being my son's teacher. So as a first grader, they expected him to do the whole work by himself. Well, that's not the case for a first grader. So it was mainly him. We used Zoom. So we would have family Zoom calls just to train him to do it correctly, because first graders don't know how to use that yet. And we use YouTube for karate classes, because just like Rocio, I created an Excel spreadsheet that laid out their whole schedule throughout the day, just because, this time, the more free time they had, the more time they had to think about what was going on outside of the house. So we set a very tough schedule to follow, which was flexible at the same time, but I feel like those were the main resources. Just trying to get through with goals in mind for each and every one of us has made it a lot easier.
And for those of you that are interested, later on in the discussion, we'll actually show you an example of both Noemi and Rocio's schedules. So you'll get to see what they mean by this. It's really interesting tools. And I can understand how they kept so organized. So we touched on this a little bit, but just to maybe dive into it a little bit deeper, if there's another parent or caregiver in the home, how have you gone about actually sharing those responsibilities? Noemi, if you just want to start, because I know you'd already talked about, your partner becoming a teacher. If you want to expand on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so it was very funny because at the beginning of the pandemic, I was given this position at 4 Degrees, and he was actually laid off because of the pandemic. So we just work as a team the whole time, and this time, we decided, okay, I'm starting a new position. It requires a lot. It has 3 different roles in it. I'll focus on my job, and you focus on teaching. So we worked always as a team, and we always try to think, okay, what do you prefer to do? What are you good at? I feel more comfortable, filling out all the forms. He feels more comfortable cooking or, doing random things, going to the doctor. So we just share the responsibilities in a way that works for both of us. And I think relying on the kids is also a big part of that. If they see us working together, they know that they need to work together the same way.
That's good. You guys are setting such a great example during such a crazy time. Rocio, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. Okay. So the way we did it in theory was very good. So my husband usually has a lot of back-to-backs, but he blocked in his calendar from 10 to 11 in the morning and then for noon. And I don't have anything blocked because my agenda is always like all over the map. So if it works, he is the math and science teacher, and I am the spelling, reading, social science teacher. But then if he has back-to-back, I become the math teacher. It's like I feel like I'm the catch-all. So the reality is that most times, and don't get me wrong, he's an amazing teacher, but sometimes he has back-to-backs, and I have this webinar, and I have to have a kid on Zoom. Sometimes I have 4 Zooms at the same time, and one of them is a webinar for Latinas in tech, and I just want to pull my head out. So I cannot even pretend or draw an image of perfection, that I would be lying big time. But we try, and the last week of school, we didn't even deliver homeworks. We knew they did it. We just didn't scan them. And the teacher was like, you know what? Let's just, doing our best, but not, kick ourselves. But yeah, it's teamwork. And I really send a huge shout out and all my warmest hug to all moms that are doing it all by themselves, because I'm struggling with somebody that is trying to help out, and just my appreciation to you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. And Dee, how about you as a newer mom?
So my husband and I by now have it pretty dialed in. The first thing you have to let go out the window is that any notion that it's going to be evenly spread, because it's just not. And not having that expectation does help a lot. So what we try to do is every morning we kind of like go over the critical meetings, we call it. Like those are the ones where the baby should probably be in the care of the other person. And the rest is just a free-for-all. But sometimes when our critical meetings overlap, one of us just gets the baby and does their best. So sometimes we do appear in meetings carrying a baby. We do have a crying baby every now and then, but I think exactly just exercising grace, being gracious with yourself. It helps a lot. Yeah.
I know. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, as someone on the other side who sometimes a coworker brings a baby into a meeting, I'm very happy about it.
I appreciate it. Sometimes I do feel bad, but sometimes there's just no choice.
It's okay. No one's sad about it.
Yeah. For coding, though, I do try to keep the baby away from those like sort of work meetings where we're actually coding, but if it's a meeting like morning stand up, the baby can come.
I love it. Okay, so we talked a lot about, this whole balancing act, but one of the things that we really want to focus on is balancing and focusing on yourself. And so it can be really challenging to be focused on work and family without also dedicating focus and energy on yourself. So do you make space for self-care? And if so, how much time do you give yourself and how do you spend that time? Dee, let's just start off with you.
Sure. I personally think that self-care shouldn't be like an extra. It should be a must for every mom because, well, first of all, how are you going to be your best mom if you're not taking care of yourself? But second, I think I really want to make sure that my daughter grows up seeing her mom taking care of herself so she does it too. I don't want to give her the impression that once you become a mom, you're not important. That's kind of backwards, but so I do it for both of those reasons. And because of that, I do try to find an hour or so every day where I either go work out or attend to one of many hobbies. Lately, it's been baking bread. But it's always a trade-off. So like I get an hour and my husband gets an hour, or some days he gets 2 hours and the next day I get 2 hours. But it's kind of that past the baby game again, but for funner things.
Okay, how about Noemi?
Yeah, so I try to do it as much as possible, but I try to implement it with other activities. For example, if I'm doing exercise, I'm doing it along with my son. If it's, just watching a movie, it's with my partner or hanging out with my daughter. That's how I've been, sort of, I guess, adding my self-care time. I guess I should be more like Dee, but I always put them first. So whenever there's extra time and I see them kind of bored or kind of, upset, I tend to them instead of just taking care of me. So I feel like by doing it together, we're taking care of each other and we're spending time and growing our bond. So that's how I've been doing it.
Of that. And I'm sure with Dee, it's a lot harder with the baby. I can imagine, Dee.
Yeah, eventually you should, I mean, it's great to have self-care while also having quality family time. That's also good.
Yeah.
Rocio, how about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much like Nomi. Sometimes we do have to choose, right? Me time or family time. And it's just that family time makes me so happy. And unfortunately with work is so limited that I might prefer, to just play a board game with the kids, watch a movie, or camp outside with a tent in the yard. Like that just makes me happy. And these webinars make me use the word makeup and feel good about my looks.
Me
But
too.
that's not how I look every day. I wish I did. But work helps, right? Because you want to not look okay, acceptable look in our Zoom meeting. So I do that for that, not really like if it's a Saturday or Sunday, I might be in my yoga pants. But I would work out. I definitely, COVID makes us more sedentary. So we do need to compensate, not just for fitness, but for health. So that's very important that we all do, and not to forget, again, going back to that, we have to be gentle and graceful to ourselves. We just need to balance it right, because some things gotta give.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know that I have 2 sisters with kids, and I think part of their me time is also just reaching out to each other, just like, okay, we're gonna talk to Tia Carla now, just to hang out.
Yeah, reaching out to your friends, like that's also me time, right? That's the part that we lost. Like all our good friends, our amigas, our familia, and having those Zoom happy hours are a lifesaver.
Absolutely. Okay, now focusing on your kids. how have you explained the pandemic and social distancing to your children, and how have they accustomed themselves to living under quarantine? Rocio, you want to start?
Yeah. So it's been a long, slow process. At the beginning, obviously, everything was very like scary, right? The news, and we were learning as they were learning, and it was scary to see it coming. The good thing, at least in my case, my kids are already at an age where they can understand. My daughter in fourth grade could, understand what a virus is, how to transmit it. My husband and I have always been very straightforward with them in terms of information. Like, we don't like to sugarcoat too much. We want them to know the risks and why we do things and why it's important. And I have kids that are very hogareños. How do you say that? Like, they like staying at home. So sometimes it's like, I'm sorry?
I think the word is homebodied.
Yeah. So even before the pandemic, I'm like, let's go hiking. No, we want to stay at home. So it's been so easy, weirdly, to keep them at home. Even just going to give a walk that I force everybody to walk every day, they still complain. So my problem is to take them out as before. So that's an advantage to me, because I know other families, the kids just want to go out, and I haven't had to deal with that. That's my very particular case.
Okay, how about Noemi?
Yeah, so for me, it was totally different for both of my kids. So my 17-year-old, we had a lot of conversations, and she understood, she was able to see it all over the social media. But I feel like it was more difficult as time went on for her to be away from her friends. So what she started doing was, to get used to it, was doing more FaceTime calls with her friends, and just, even for exercise, they would do FaceTime calls with her friends. They would play games on Messenger or any social media. They would just get together more. And for my son, he's more social. So not like Rocio. I wish he was a homebody. He wanted to be outside every day. He didn't understand why, but it was after a while talking to him and letting him know why we were keeping each other safe, that he started to understand. So he started doing the same thing. We started a prayer with my family, doing a rosario every day at the same time. So that helped him seeing everybody, every day. And then he started calling his little cousins, or whenever his neighbors went out, he would be at the window just yelling, "Hey, everybody," this and that. So it took a while, but for both of them, I feel like helping them get outside to do walks, and just, talking to their friends, allowing them to talk to their friends, showing them that there's a different way that you can stay in touch, and spending more time together, I feel like helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dee, I know your child is too young to have anything explained to them, but I am curious to know, because your child is so young and this is an age where you're like introducing the baby to your friends and family, like how have you gone about doing that during this time, since you haven't had those chances?
Right, exactly. When you guys say like, "Oh, your kids are homebody," I'm like, I'm the kid that wants to go out. I'm the kid that wants to go camping. Like, yeah, it's been a real change of mindset to have all of our plans kind of not happen, or they're going to happen in the future, because we wanted to really rely on our family and like build a good circle of friends, and kind of have the baby be used to being around people all the time, and that is definitely not happening at the time. So it's been a little sad. She hasn't been able to meet like her grandparents yet. And she's only seen so she's met my cousins, so her aunt and her uncle once, but yeah, I don't think she knows anything other than us. So that's been really interesting. She's been on more Zoom calls than I can count. She kind of knows the dynamics now. Now when she's on camera, she starts babbling because she's like, oh, that's what we do, right?
She's
But-
ready for her role at Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. I'm building her resume. But yeah, I think we're still been able to build a sense of community thanks to all the Zoom calls that we're joining. Like we join PEPS, which is, I think it's particular to Washington, but it's like parents in your area, and we meet once a week, and all the babies can see each other. But hopefully with time, we'll be past this, and she won't have to grow up seeing people from a screen.
I'm sure that will not be the case, but
I hope not.
Okay, so we kind of touched on this question before, but what tips do you have for creating an effective schedule for work, family time, and personal time? Noemi, let's start with you. And while you're going through it, I'll actually share the screenshot of your family schedule.
Yeah, so this is my son's schedule on a daily basis. I broke down everything that he had to do. Obviously, he knew how to do it, but I just, he's one of those persons that likes to know, okay, what's next? How much time do I have? Okay, I already did this, and he likes to see his accomplishments. So just making sure that there were things like karate, making sure that they had exercise, that they had time for free play, and making it fun. For example, his exercise sometimes was just dance. He liked doing that, and making sure that they knew the expectations of doing chores, even though that they were home all the time, making sure that that was a part of their day, and helping them see the schedule where we made family time, we made time for family, and that helped them understand how important family is, because they said, oh, well, we have time, just for us. And they love that, even reducing their screen time, because I did, because of all the time they spend on Zoom calls. They were really looking forward to their family time. And for me, I just use like a whiteboard, write down everything that I have to do throughout the day. And then I work with the calendar for the whole family. So having that structure, even though it might seem like too rigid, helped us make sure that we were doing the things that we needed to do, as well as making sure that we had time for the important things, which was our family.
And I'm sure that given the age difference between the two kids, having that family time, I'm sure has brought them really close during this time.
Oh yes, because their idea of family time is way different, but taking turns to do what each other wanted has been really fun.
I bet. Okay, Rocío, how about you? I have your schedule up.
Yeah, well, it's so similar to yours. I love it that we both have the check marks. The check marks actually were introduced by my husband, and it totally changed the game because it gamified it. So they kind of were trying to race each other. And then if you had all your check marks, my husband also introduced a type of currency, which you get a star. And it kind of works for my kids. So if you finish the whole day of check marks, you get a star. And if you get X number of stars, which I never kind of keep up with the currency exchange, but if you get X number of stars, at the end of the month, you get to buy a toy or an app. So that really is better than money for them. And that really helps. And what I like about the schedule is that, so the school has its own schedule when they go to Zoom, when they have this type of homeworks, but it doesn't include the family life, like as you mentioned, the chores, exercising, or something that we do together, or lunchtime. And by doing this, and if you see at the right, I have a boss column, like who's the boss of each line, and that we kind of, some of them we put on our own Google Calendar so that we plan our meetings accordingly. It's not always possible, but it helps a lot. So that we always have a parent for lunch, we always have a parent to get a Zoom started. So this is a little bit how we did it. we added, additional learning opportunities like let's do journaling, let's, be creative time, or walking the dogs, which checks physical education and walking the dog. So it's helping, and my kids learn, how to load the dishwasher, how to clean the kitchen with us. So all those things I think are really enriching. I mean, it's a terrible situation, the pandemic, but silver lining, kids learn chores, kids learn how to be independent and experience homeschooling in a way. So I think we all grew by doing this type of things.
Yeah, I thought it was so cool how the schedules were so similar to him. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, this is our last question before we open it up to Q&A. If there's one piece of advice you would give to other moms during these times, what would it be? Rocio, why don't you start?
I'm just thinking. So I already mentioned the most important part of be gentle to yourself. My dad gave me an advice that I think is very applicable to my parenting situation right now. And he always said, always fly higher than you are used to, because the mountains, if they were, unexpected things happen, you have ways to maneuver. And this pandemic brought us, very high mountains to surf. And there are other things, unexpected things that can happen. So always allow yourself a couch of that personal time, that time and compassion that you might need when those mountains get higher. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense, but when we live in the pandemic, we live under this permanent additional stress. Mm-hmm. And just give yourself that padding that'll help you navigate. Be gentle to yourself, to your significant other, to your kids. And maybe I'm used to having my house clean all the time. Well, maybe this time I allow it to be 20% more dirty, and that gives me a little bit more happiness, units of happiness, let's say. Yeah.
I love it. And I love the notion of flying higher than the mountains. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's my dad's.
Love it. Dee, how about you?
So yeah, similar to Rocio, I thought of like, if I had one message, so it's very similar. I was gonna say, yeah, be kind to yourself, because your best is good enough. And I truly think that sometimes we get a bit of a distorted view, because when we read something about a super mom, it's like about a mom that has it all and can do it all, and she's great at it and she makes it look easy. But that doesn't always have to be you. That sometimes can be you, but sometimes it's just about surviving. Sometimes it's just making it through the day, and that's perfectly okay. And you shouldn't feel bad about that. You should never feel bad like you're a bad mom, because you're still taking care of your kids and you're still doing so much. So that's a big one to keep repeating to yourself, because I find that it's very easy to forget it, that you're doing your best. And I guess I would reiterate, if you feel like you're drowning, stop for a second and look at the ones that are really important and just do those. Like the rest, you'll get to it eventually.
Yeah. How about you, Noemi?
Yeah, so this time felt, so I was a single mom for 15 years, and it felt like those 15 years were compacted into this pandemic. So I feel like if I could give an advice, would be to enjoy this opportunity. I know that it's really sad, everything that's been going on, but when have we ever had the world slow down like that for us? And I feel like we need to cherish our family and our kids, which is, we're always on the run. We're always from one thing to another, and we're forced this time to just stay still and enjoy each other. And I feel like enjoy the gift of time, the gift of family, and make sure you make time for what matters most to you, because one day time just flies by.
These are all wonderful, wonderful pieces of advice. So with that, that's all of the questions that we had prepared. So let's get to questions from the audience. Just FYI, if there are any particular questions folks want answered that we don't get to, we'll do our best to reach out after tonight's events with the answers. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Daisy, who's also on the Latinas in Tech Chicago board, and she's going to go through the questions.
Thank you, Carla, and hello, everyone. Thank you, ladies, for sharing all that valuable information. I'm sure our audience will definitely benefit from this. And it looks like we do have a couple of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one. Ladies, please feel free to answer, whomever. And then, so Anonymous asked, I'm curious to know how many husbands/partners are really pulling their weight. Like Rocio said, in theory, it's even, but at least in my case, I end up doing more and it bothers me and it doesn't help. Any thoughts?
I hear you. There is always, and I think our cultural background sometimes plays against us. Like we have been working really hard to, like just in general, I'm not talking about myself, but women have been working so hard in the Latin culture to, you know, be independent and have our jobs, but still we see more and more them coming home to clean the house, educate the kids. So technically this feminist liberation is really not, like now we get more money, but we work more and we still are the moms. And guys really need to take on that responsibility. And here I would like to just grab my husband and bring him here, because I'm gonna just share an experience. There was a woman in a mom's group I had around this town that said, oh my God, it's Friday, I'm so afraid my husband is gonna come and he's like another kid that I need to take care of. And he's like, move away. And he starts answering as if he was me, like, I'm not a mom, but I'm a dad. And I know what it is to take care of my kids, because my wife was sick one day and I had to take care of them and it was so hard. So we have it easy when we go to work, and we need to be team players. This is not a her thing, it's an us thing. And I think that we have to have an open conversation on it and say, look, just, I know that this is what we planned, but this is what came out. And, you know, this makes me feel this way. Makes me feel I'm not appreciated, makes me feel like, you know, you're not participating enough. And I love it if you could take care of this particular item. So don't be aggressive, be assertive, and be specific. Guys really need us to be specific. Like in general, you're not participating, maybe just tell them, like, could you please change 2 more diapers per day? That would just make a whole world of difference. Those things, it really gets to their brain a lot faster, I think. That's my piece of advice.
I'm particularly curious, Dee, on your perspective, because you're in a very unique spot where at the very beginning of your child's life, you guys are balancing this more together than I think, you know, what is typically the case for families. So we'd just love to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And even comparing to when I was a baby, my mom was here probably the second week the baby was born, and she was like, wow, this is nothing like when you were a baby. Because yeah, Latino culture, I think, tends to be more like it's a mom thing and that dad is not involved. But me and my husband always have conversations about how cool it is to be a parent, and we like what a privilege it is for us to have this time with our baby. And I think coming from a place of like, okay, this is like growing time with our baby, I think it makes us both want to be involved. We don't try to make things equal, but we do try to make things specific. Just like Rocio said, I mean, nobody's perfect. Sometimes we don't phrase things right, but for the most part, what we try to do is, instead of attacking the person, we say things like, okay, yeah, so we need to change her right after she eats, or we need to, so we talk more as a team and specific things other than, oh, you're kind of slacking off here. Like, instead of attacking the person, we try to attack it as a problem that we're both solving. So it kind of keeps us involved. But I think over time, he also starts to get excited, and I mean, being a mom is such an empowering thing, and it can be the same experience for a dad. So you just have to work at it.
Definitely, yeah. What about you, Noemi? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so even though I said that, we worked as a team, which we did, by the end of the 3 months, he was burned out. He was like, oh my God, every time my son came in, and it was just like everything bothered him. But it was, he had never been at home that long, let alone being a teacher. So I mean, I think we should also give credit to guys who try, because they do try. They try to help. And I feel like, we should also communicate with with them, that we appreciate when they do try, because it wouldn't have been possible to get through those months without his help. But I understood that he was burned out and he needed a break from the kids, and he needed his own, peaceful, quiet time, self-care time. So I feel like they do come through as much as we allow them. I stepped back and he stepped in. So I feel like we need to, balance it out together.
Can I just add one thing that you just said? Exactly. Sometimes stepping back will help them step in because they don't feel like they're being managed. So they kind of feel like, oh, it's something that I can make my own. So for example, my husband now puts the baby down for naps because he gets to play music with her and kind of they do their own thing. But yeah, it's like, it's not how I would do it, but he feels empowered by it. So yeah, totally.
Those are awesome tips, ladies. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the next question because I see we're having a handful now. And someone else asked, do your kids play EDU games? What resources do you all use to find high quality EDU games? What are you expecting to get out of these for your niñitos? Anybody can answer.
I was gonna go. So I am very strict about games that they play. Everything has to be educational. And I usually only let them download apps that are going to teach them either math or a skill. One of my favorite things that I started doing with them was typing games, because I know that that's very useful, and they like it. They see, of course, they would like to be playing other killing, shooting, whatever games that kids their age are playing. But just making that expectation, I feel like going online and making sure that whatever games your kids are playing are okay with your standards. I think my favorite one was Typing 101. It has a lot of cool games. And other than that, I don't let them play that much games. So maybe Rocio might have better.
Yeah, no, yes, I do let them a little more than I should. I have to admit that. Sometimes I'm like in the middle of a webinar and they're like, can I play the iPad? And I'm like, yes. I shouldn't. It's like my default nanny, but I do try to limit it like to no more than 2 hours a day plus a movie. But when they're in the iPad though, I also only make sure they have apps that, first, I don't like killing or fighting, and that they have to activate their brain. So Starfall, they really like it. It has math. My daughter does a lot of coding. So code.org has quite a few things. So she codes, how she creates her own like Frozen story. And we keep buying toys, real toys, for building stuff. Like, for example, I found this on Facebook ads. Like every week or every 2 weeks, we get like a package with a bunch of wood pieces and nails, and she creates a boat or something that they use with their hands. And actually, I want to take a second to make a recommendation to the crowd here. Use this chat and share your own resources, and we will share it with the other moms, because honestly, I'm here sharing my personal story, and you are too, but I think the power of the collective is even better, and I'll make sure I also add the few apps that are educational that we have been using. But yeah, I think I'm learning here with you, just right along.
Yeah, those are really great. Everyone, please feel free to add that into the comment section. I'm sure the audience would definitely benefit from this. And now somebody else asked, honestly, how has work changed since working from home? Do you find yourself working more hours than you usually would if working in the office? I feel like I'm struggling with getting consumed in work. Any advice?
I have some. I've reflected on this. So I think that working from home was hard on everyone. So it was a good starting point to know that, like, I was facing challenges because I'm a new mom and whatever else, but really it was like a game changer for everybody. So we were all trying to figure out how to work with each other. And I think one of the hardest things for me was once I started back at work, I had that sort of work hours mindset, and I was like expecting to do 8 hours, continuous 8 hours worth of work. And whenever I wouldn't do that, I would feel bad. But that's so unrealistic, because when you're at the office, you also go to lunch with a buddy, or go find somebody walking around the halls and you talk to them, and you do a lot of things that aren't just like typing furiously. And I didn't make that connection at first, so I felt bad that my perceived productivity wasn't the same. But it doesn't. It's not the same. You shouldn't expect that. So once I dropped that expectation, I felt much better, and nobody complained. And then another thing that I started doing, I started to think of the day as a less conventional block of time. So instead, I work now from 9 to 3, and then after that, I just have just fun with my family. We get through the day, and so my baby goes to bed anywhere from 6:30 to 7:30. And after we put her to bed, I go back to work and I do work things. So I just like take out those 2 hours and just tag them at the end of the day, and it really works for me. But like, all I'm saying is just one example of the day doesn't have to be what it used to be at home. It could be whatever works for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, there's one point that we didn't touch, and is cleaning the house. Because when we used to work in offices, and when COVID wasn't here, sometimes you have a cleaning person that comes once every 2 weeks or something. But now that is not possible also. So while you're working, you're also cooking and you're also cleaning, doing laundry. It's like, you feel so guilty. But those things have to happen. Like, our family environment needs to continue, and we have to even be open and talk with our managers and say, you know what, I'm going to block this time in my calendar for just this family break. And don't assume that. You have to be explicit with it, because if we're in technology, we know that, I don't know about you guys, but when I became a mom, I was the only mom in the whole company. So nobody got it. I had to raise my hand and say, hey, I will need to be a little more flexible. So I'm super happy to see how more and more companies are seeing the value of remote work. So when I was before Latinas in Tech, I was working at Prezi, and I was super advocate for remote work, and I am more even more now than before.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can all admit that there's been definitely a shift of changes between home office and regular office, but I think with our day-to-day life, we're kind of learning a little how to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
And then next question, somebody asked, any advice for parents with toddlers? Do you remember any disciplinary methods that you implemented when your kids were toddlers? So difficult.
I'm scared of that part, so let me know.
Oh boy.
That was so being a nanny for 13 years, I got a lot of chance to play with that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I feel like it depends on each toddler. Each toddler is going to be different, and the discipline that you use with one might not work with the other. So I feel like what I saw across all the kids and my kids was just making sure that you rewarded more than you disciplined. Just because if you reward the positive and don't pay that much attention to the negative, they feel, oh, I'm a good kid. I can do this, or they feel more empowered to behave better. Whereas if you're continuously telling them no, 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 they'll fastly learn that word and say no to you. So I feel like just making sure that when they do wrong things, I guess as toddlers, there's not much they can do, but just tell them right there and then, hey, we don't do this. Or if you choose to use timeout, or if you choose to have a space in your house that is for quiet time when they do something inappropriate, just make sure that it's not that long. Don't overdo it. And like I mentioned, let it go. Once they get out of timeout, just let it go and move on to the next part. Because if you keep reminding them throughout the day of the mistake that they did at the beginning of the day, it's not going to help their behavior.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing in that one. Negotiating with toddlers is really hard, and almost, I would say, impossible. It's easier with a baby than with a toddler. And one thing that I would recommend that I have done before is that if both parents work, one starts late and the other one ends early, because toddlers just want to see you. They just want to be with you, and they miss you. So that even without COVID, just if you have work, that type of dynamic, if you can do it, I would encourage it, because face-to-face interaction with parents is always super valuable. When you're at home, I was working from home when I had a toddler, it makes it a bit difficult for them to see you and ignoring them. So I learned that having my own space where they cannot see me at all helps for them to process that mommy is working. She's not there to play with me if they're seeing you. That worked for me, but you need to get your to understand how your toddler perceives this type of situation, if that helps.
Okay, I will definitely keep that in mind for my future children. Okay, so somebody asked, do you focus on activities that are more focused on learning or playing / releasing energy?
I feel like both, because even though you want them to learn as much as possible, they do need to, they're still stressed with this whole situation, and they need to release it somehow. And everyone's affected differently. I mean, 7 years old, 5, 3, whatever number you have, they're being, they're stressed. And I feel like making sure that that's even on a daily basis has worked for me. My daughter is something relaxing before bedtime, playing piano. My son, making sure that he takes a shower and we read together, relaxes him. Whereas throughout the day, they're learning how to read. My son's learning how to read. My daughter's learning typing or whatever it might be, but they're also having time to do exercise with me, or as a family, boxing. They love boxing. That's a great source of releasing energy. So whatever your kids might like, just make sure that you have both, because I feel like there's no point in making sure that they're learning if they're going to be stressed out of their minds.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind, especially the younger ones. They have a lot of energy to release, so it is kind of difficult to maintain a balance of both of those. Okay, so I believe we have 2 more questions, and then we'll start to wrap it up. but somebody else asked, what morning rituals do you have for yourself before starting your day? What do you do to set the tone of your day?
I can take that one. On the ideal world, I would wake up at 6, run or do some exercises with the TV, then have coffee. I would be able to wake up my kids early, but that typically doesn't happen. But we would have breakfast together. And then by 8:30 or 9, I start working. And then is when that, like, you do the kids, I do the kids, and or they do themselves as much as they can. And we try to have a hard stop at 5, unless you have a very important meeting. For us, really just hard stop at 5 is important, because then the bosses are the kids and the family and nobody else. So it has to be really justified. And actually I have a tradition that at my last meeting, I open my door and I just say, freedom! And then I know that family time starts. So make it fun and enjoyable, I would say. That's how our day typically looks like. But the exercising, it should happen, but it doesn't always. So that's when I forgive myself sometimes for skipping something.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna try that next time I work. I think that's a good way. Sometimes releasing it all out, it's a good way to start your day. And then the next question somebody asked is, how do your kids know when to change from one activity to the other? I can see the calendar has blocks of 30 minutes or 15 minutes.
So for my kids, well, my 17-year-old, she obviously, has a timer, or she can keep track of time. For my 7-year-old, he loves setting up timers. So he always goes, Siri, set a timer for so-and-so. So he makes sure that he has a timer, because he has to keep on that. And, even if he has extra time, he won't start the next activity until that's the time. So yeah, you're using Siri and timer, and that helps them stay on time.
I second that. I also added reminders to my calendar, because if I don't remind them, they will miss it. So I let them be the managers of their time. But if at the hour of their Zoom meeting they're not in, I say, hey, you're meeting. And then they'll remember. But I would say if I don't remind them, 75% of their meetings wouldn't happen. Those are my kids.
That's fair.
Alexa.
Okay. So for our last question, someone asked, what morning rituals do you have for yourself? Oh, sorry. Okay, that one was asked already. I'm curious to know how you've adjusted the schedules for the summer. We are still doing iReady, typing and reading, and added Duolingo. I think that's a follow-up.
Oh yeah, that's a follow-up. So
Yeah.
there are a few camps that are starting to open. Some are online, like the Girl Scouts have an online camp. So those are new. We did keep all the iReady and the language learning we kept as well. We did Rosetta Stone, but Duolingo is great as well. Drops is another language option. And then there's tutors that you can get from abroad, which is also really great and cost effective. Yeah, so I would say, OutSchool is the new one we're checking out. That are little courses you can take. And there are a few camps that are opening live, but you got to choose if you want to do that.
And for my kids, so my daughter is participating in a 15-month long course for the Architecture Center here in Chicago. And that's going to keep her busy. It's going to be from 9 to 4. Monday through Thursday and Saturdays. So I don't really have to worry about, during the day. The after school is going to be basically the same. She gets to choose the activities that make her feel comfortable as long as she's accomplishing exercise, relaxing, and, something fun. For my son, I feel like just making sure that I have 3 activities a day that are educational. He's going to start doing piano lessons online. And we like to do science research. So he loves asking questions. And I've given him his own little notebook where we can keep track of all the experiments that he wants to learn about. So I feel like just making sure that they do have a summer, it's not school. So I'm giving them more flexibility throughout the day for them to have more activities. And yeah, just making sure that they have fun. I know it's going to be a tough summer because we're not going to have the same things, but you're their core. So whatever feelings you might have in your house, that's how they're going to enjoy their summer.
Definitely. Well, I think that is a wrap for all the questions. Thank you to our audience for those of you who submitted questions. And thank you, ladies, for addressing and putting in your input. Now I'm going to pass it back to Carla for some additional remarks.
Yeah, thank you again to the audience for those additional questions. That, like Daisy mentioned, that basically covers our panel. Sincere thank you to our panelists for taking time from their very busy lives to talk to us tonight. And thank you to everyone who joined. If you haven't already, don't forget to register to become part of our community and stay up to date on all of our activities. So you can see here, you can join us at www.latinasintech.org. One other reminder is that the Greater Latinas in Tech organization is going to be hosting an open forum next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central to discuss racial equality, representation, inclusion, and justice. So we hope you'll join us there as well. And last but not least, you can also stay up to date by following us on social media. Thank you, everyone. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.